Imagine asking your government a simple question about a massive Chinese embassy being built meters from Britain's most sensitive financial cables, and instead of getting an answer, you receive a letter saying they hold no information within the scope of those questions. Not, "we can't tell you for security reasons," not, "that information is classified," but essentially, "we've got nothing, mate, ask someone else." That's precisely what happened to Kevin Hollinrake, the Conservative Party chairman, when he tried to get basic information about what critics are calling a Chinese mega spy hub in the heart of London. We are talking about an embassy that will house over 2,000 people, with secret basement rooms positioned just 1 metre away from fibre optic cables carrying Britain's financial lifeblood. And the government's response to legitimate questions is basically, computer says no. Today, we're diving into this absolute security nightmare, why Labour refuses to answer fundamental questions about it, and what this tells us about a government that seems more interested in Chinese investment than British national security. Quick favour, if this is already making your blood boil, hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon. Over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps us expose these stories. Cheers if you did. Right, let's get into this security shambles. So, let's lay out exactly what happened here, because the sheer audacity of Labour's non-response is genuinely breathtaking. Kevin Hollinrake sent a letter to the Housing Department asking several entirely reasonable questions about the proposed Chinese embassy. These weren't gotcha questions or political point-scoring exercises. These were fundamental queries about who's responsible for this project, which minister has been assigned to oversee it, and why the Chinese government hasn't released detailed drawings of their plans for inside the embassy. Basic accountability questions that any functioning democracy should be able to answer. The response he received? A letter stating the department holds no information within the scope of those questions. That's not a refusal based on security grounds, that's claiming they literally have no information whatsoever. Either they're lying, which is appalling, or they're genuinely approving a massive foreign embassy without knowing crucial details, which is somehow even worse. Speaking exclusively to GB News, Hollinrake absolutely tore into the government's pathetic response. "It's pathetic," he declared, not mincing words. "We've not been battling to get the information for the sake of it. We're battling to get the information because rejecting the embassy on that site is in the national interest. And I just don't understand why the government will not run this country in the national interest. That is the problem." Run the country in the national interest. That should be the baseline expectation for any government, not some aspirational goal. But here we are, with a government that appears more interested in courting Chinese investment than protecting British national security. And when asked basic questions about that decision, they essentially plead ignorance. Hollinrake went on to explain exactly why this embassy location is such a catastrophic security risk, and honestly, the more details you hear, the more insane it becomes that this is even being considered. 9 Labour MPs, as well as all the Conservatives and other parties too, do not want this embassy where it is. It's totally the wrong place to put it. 9 Labour MPs. That's not just opposition criticism. That's the government's own backbenchers saying this is madness. When your own side is rebelling over a security decision, that should be a massive red flag. But Hollinrake didn't stop there. He explained the technical nightmare at the heart of this. It's near sensitive cables that run from the city into the rest of the country, these dark fibre cables. The only way you can access them is physically tapping into them, and this embassy runs right over the top of them. Let's pause on that for a moment, because it's absolutely crucial. Dark fibre cables carrying financial information from the City of London to the rest of Britain. The only way to access the data flowing through those cables is physical proximity. You need to be able to tap into them directly. And the Chinese are about to build an embassy with secret basement rooms positioned right on top of them. It's like discovering someone wants to build a house directly over your safe and being told not to worry about it.
Hollinrake continued, "So the temptation there for a Chinese government which will obviously operate the embassy to look at vital economic information that's in their interest and not in our interest to give them, it will just be overwhelming. It is disastrous policy, and it must be rejected by this government." But they're not going to reject it. They're going to approve it. That last sentence is particularly damning. He's not saying they might approve it, he's saying they are going to approve it. Despite the security concerns, despite the rebellion from their own MPs, despite the proximity to critical infrastructure, despite everything, Labour is going to wave this through. And why? Because they're desperate for Chinese investment, desperate for anything that might generate economic growth, willing to sacrifice long-term national security for short-term financial gain. It's not just bad policy, it's the kind of strategic myopia that historians write about when explaining how countries stumbled into catastrophic security compromises. GB News's Catherine Forster highlighted the absolutely insane proximity we're talking about here. The Chinese plans show they intend to rebuild basement walls and place them just 1 metre away from these sensitive cables. 1 metre. That's roughly 3 feet for anyone still thinking in imperial measurements. That's not a respectful distance, that's basically sitting on top of them. You could reach out and touch these cables from the embassy basement. And Hollinrake's response was withering. "We know they will tamper with them. They've got form for doing this all around the world, not just in the UK. In our own country, they've had their own secret police forces operating. We know this." Secret police forces operating in Britain. That's not conspiracy theory territory, that's documented fact. Chinese police stations have been discovered operating in the UK without authorization, monitoring Chinese nationals and dissidents. If they're willing to run illegal police operations on British soil, what makes anyone think they'll respect the security of fibre optic cables when given legal cover through embassy premises? Hollinrake continued, "So the temptation there for a Chinese government which will obviously operate the embassy to look at vital economic information that's in their interest and not in our interest to give them, it will just be overwhelming. It is disastrous policy, and it must be rejected by this government." But they're not going to reject it. They're going to approve it. That last sentence is particularly damning. He's not saying they might approve it, he's saying they are going to approve it. Despite the security concerns, despite the rebellion from their own MPs, despite the proximity to critical infrastructure, despite everything, Labour is going to wave this through. And why? Because they're desperate for Chinese investment, desperate for anything that might generate economic growth, willing to sacrifice long-term national security for short-term financial gain. It's not just bad policy, it's the kind of strategic myopia that historians write about when explaining how countries stumbled into catastrophic security compromises. GB News's Catherine Forster highlighted the absolutely insane proximity we're talking about here. The Chinese plans show they intend to rebuild basement walls and place them just 1 metre away from these sensitive cables. 1 metre. That's roughly 3 feet for anyone still thinking in imperial measurements. That's not a respectful distance, that's basically sitting on top of them. In other words, this is not theoretical, it has already happened elsewhere. Her message to Britain was unambiguous: reconsider this course of action or face consequences. Now, take a step back and appreciate the sheer absurdity of this moment. Britain, once famed for exporting liberal democratic values, is now being warned by American politicians that it risks sanctions for restricting free speech. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. Miss Luna went even further, framing the issue not as technical compliance, but as a political war against Elon Musk and free speech itself. That's a devastating line, because it reframes the entire debate. This is no longer about protecting children from artificial intelligence misuse. It becomes about whether the British state is comfortable suppressing platforms that host uncomfortable opinions. And this is where Sir Keir Starmer finds himself trapped between instincts. On one side, the loyally cautious internationalist who wants strong relations with the United States and a thriving technology sector. On the other, the political leader under pressure from activists, regulators, and party figures who view free speech platforms with suspicion. The danger here is escalation. Ban X or even seriously attempt it, and Britain risks retaliation. Not just rhetorical outrage, but economic consequences, tariffs, trade delays, diplomatic frost. At a time when growth is already fragile, that's a gamble bordering on reckless. And let us not forget the U-turn factor. STARMER's critics believe this ends the same way many of his toughest-sounding positions do: announcement, headline, backlash, quiet retreat. If that happens, the damage may already have been done, the signal sent, the trust shaken. This entire saga exposes a central tension in modern British politics: the desire to regulate speech in the name of safety versus the reality of living in a globally connected digital economy. You can't pull one thread without tugging the entire web. So, where does this leave us? With a Prime Minister facing pressure from regulators at home, allies abroad, and critics who see this as an attack on free expression dressed up as concern. With a government that wants American investment while antagonizing American tech. And with a public watching another culture war skirmish play out while the cost of living quietly hums in the background. If Sir Keir Starmer truly wants to protect children, the focus should be on enforceable, proportionate rules applied consistently across platforms, not grandstanding threats aimed at a single company because it happens to host inconvenient voices. Because once you start banning platforms, you don't just silence the people you dislike, you set a precedent, and precedents have a habit of outliving the politicians who create them. Thank you for watching British Mirror. Your time and attention are genuinely appreciated. Until next time, good day.